will stand.
Yeah, and there's a similar one that like,
The similar
man
one,
plans his ways in his heart, but the Lord guides
yes,
his steps.
that's the one that I have those both on this
Yeah.
page.
All right. I think we're live,
We're
dude.
live.
Yeah. I mean,
Hello to the Twitchers and the. Are we on X
I
too?
think we're on
We're on
X,
X.
Twitch, and YouTube right now.
Do we need to introduce the idea of white blood cells, or is that
Yeah, I mean,
yeah?
yeah. Why don't you go on a little diatribe monologue here?
Well, I've tried to think that monologue through, and I should work on that better. I guess this is a perfect time because we may have an audience of one. So, whomever that one person is, bear with me as I refine my monologue here. But white blood cells, I got pulled over by another cop this week, and on my birthday.
Did you really?
Yeah, on my birthday. I was speeding, no question. I was going from C470 into Golden. I was gonna go take a hike by myself because my wife was just totally blowing me off all
On
day
your
on my birthday.
birthday?
I just
Oh
did
man,
nothing all day on
did
my
that hurt your
birthday,
ego?
dude.
You should have
It
told me.
was it was a little
I
devastating. I
texted
said,
you.
"Well,
You
dude,
should
I
have come
know,
by. I said, come by the office.
I
I have a present for you.
I know you did," and I apologize that I
No,
just
that's all
was
right.
I
You
was
wanted to
feeling
sulk,
I
and
wanted to sulk,
yeah.
and I did own that, and the hike helped, but on the way to the hike, it's a pretty big downhill from C470 down into Golden, right? And it's off the highway. It's an off ramp. It's kind of this long off ramp, so there's no traffic on it. And I'm coming off a highway onto another highway, and it's long. It's like probably a half a mile or a mile long on this off ramp. And so I'm kind of flying down the hill. I'm going like 70, and then sure enough, there's a motorcycle cop up in the intersection. So um, he flashes the lights on. He pulls
Uh,
me over.
when that happens to you, for me, it's like my stomach. I get like the pit, like, oh crap, and then you start thinking, like, what did I do? I mean,
I
you knew you
did.
were
I
speeding. You're
knew I was
like, I'm going
speeding,
100 in a.
and well, I wasn't going 100.
Thankfully,
But again, like the short that got the most views recently was I titled it "Man Chooses to Run Red Light."
oh, okay,
And then I
yeah,
talked
yeah,
about that. That one got a lot of views,
nice, yeah.
right? And again, I want to put this out there that I'm not and this is stupid to say. I'm not a bad driver because everybody says they're not a bad driver, right? And no matter how bad they are, they say that they're not a bad driver. I'm not out there. I'm very conscientious. Honestly, that's my main thing about with the street racers or people with Harleys is like I really appreciate people who are conscientious, and I go out of my way to be very conscientious about not impeding other people or harming other people. That's kind of my main thing. So anyway, the cop pulls me over. He gives me a ticket, and afterwards I walk back to him. As he's giving me the ticket, another like his supervisor or something pulled in and was like, you know how they kind of
Block you
they
in, kind
block.
of, yeah.
He didn't block me in, but the motorcycle cop was off to the side of this kind of busy road, and then this guy pulls his truck in where he leaves the tail end of it out into traffic a little bit, and he's like attempting to be protective. There's plenty of shoulder to pull off on and
Right.
not create danger, but he intentionally leaves his tail end of his car in traffic a little bit so as to like supposedly protect
Yeah, from
me.
him, or yeah.
And anyway, after I got the ticket, I walked back to those guys. I got out of my car and I walked back to both of them.
Did they like reach for their guns and
They're like,
say,
"Sir, no, no, no." They're like, "Sir, this is very dangerous." And I know it's dangerous. And I get way over to the side and I just said, "I just want to talk to you for a minute." Because first of all, I wanted you to notice that I don't know if you noticed while you're writing my ticket, but it's my birthday today. So I just wanted to point that out. Number one. And number two, I told you several times before you wrote me the ticket that I didn't harm anybody else. Nobody else was injured. Nobody else was even near me. And I know that doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me. And I just want to point out that what you're doing with the tail end of this car is causing way more imposition on way more people than anything that I
you
did.
said that?
I said this to this because it's true.
Yeah.
And they both had nothing to say to me at that
Really?
point. They both just kind of put their tail between their legs because they knew I was right. And see, this is the thing about most law enforcement is I think that intuitively they kind of have the white blood cells mentality because if you go out of your way to go into that profession, the pay isn't great. So you're not
Right.
doing it for pay. It's because you want to be
Serve and protect.
serving protecting. And
Yeah.
and and I believe that philosophically in their hearts that's what they're doing. They just have been brainwashed that they're serving protecting the wrong people. They're serving and protecting somebody up on this perch. They're
Uh-huh.
not serving, they think they've been convinced to believe. Now, I'm not a proponent of just speeding
Right.
indiscriminately, right? I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying to be, defying all of Colorado revised statutes or, speeding laws or red lights or any of that stuff. I'm not saying to go out and defy that. But in the context of white blood cells, what I did want to say to them, and I didn't because I didn't think of this until I was on my hike and had my head cleared out, but I wanted to say that to those guys that I'm a law enforcement agent too. And I know you're
This is
laughing already.
citizen's arrest.
No, I'm not. No, the laws I am enforcing are
Okay.
God's laws,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And really, honestly, that's what I try to do. Like if I pull over a guy in a Harley, I don't just say you're an asshole for riding a Harley. I say, I want you to think about something. I've told you
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
before. The fact that you're impinging on other people's peace is something to take note of. And I just want you to think about it. You can do whatever you want with that, but it's helpful as an adult man to know that if you're taking a shit all over your neighborhood, there's probably going to be consequences to that.
Yeah.
So we should all think the same thing with the barking dog or any of the other things that we do. And so that's kind of what white blood cells to me is. We are truly kind of protective agents or enforcement agents of our like I say, ourselves, our family, and our community. Community gets really conflated with modern day terms because I don't think anybody in modern culture, in modern American culture, has any idea of what community really means
Yeah.
because I think that's been twisted massively. I think unless you are really part of a like a indigenous population community where you're
Yeah.
actually
You're depending on each other. You're providing for each
providing
other. Yeah.
shelter, protection, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, I think it's hard for us in this kind of society to understand what true community really means. You can go to small towns in this country and see it. It's much more accessible in a small town because I think the
Yeah.
economic system is so much smaller.
It requires it.
It
Yeah.
requires it. But in a big city, you have no idea what that really means, I don't think.
So, okay, wait, hold on. So you said that that on your walk you had this idea or thought that you're really protecting, that
I
you're a law enforcement officer.
Well, that's what I wanted to say to him, and I just was kind of curious what his response would have been because he would have been like, "Well, what agency do you?" I'm like, "I don't work for an agency. I'm
The
just like,
God's
I'm
agency.
God's agency." And really, right? I mean, isn't that what men are like? If you read the identity books, if you read the
Yeah.
Wild at Heart book, and you guys, there's probably a handful of you out there who've ever heard of this book, Wild at Heart. There's another book, and I refer to this multiple times on previous episodes too, is the Jamie Winship book, Living
Mm-hmm.
Fearless. He talks about identity. And those two books are very closely interwoven about this idea of what our true identity as men it is. And it's slightly different for all of us, of course, but underneath it, there's I think a centralized theme to the fact that as men, we're providers and protectors
Yeah.
is more or less what we are, and of again ourselves, our family, and our community. And as we age through our lives, in the beginning, we're learning how to manage ourselves. Like when we're kids, we're
Yeah.
learning how to manage and protect ourselves. As we get to be teenagers, we're kind of hopefully mastering that a little bit. Then we have to, start thinking about the family thing, and then as we age a little bit, then we get into the community thing. So it's a progressive, identity that you take on. But I think in all men there is that central theme
Yeah.
within their identity.
What? So, when you were sitting in your car, they pulled you over, right?
Yeah.
So, one is you knew you were in the wrong. You were speeding. You were
Yeah.
breaking the speed limit that
Yes.
was posted as a sign.
Well, it wasn't. He asked me. He's like, "Do you know what the limit is?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm guessing it's 55." And he's like, "Yeah, it is." And he's like, he's like, I had you at 71, 72, 74, 70. I'm like, "Why are there so many different numbers?" And he's like, "Well, because at various times." I'm like, "Okay, I get it." But I
Was
said,
he
"Did
pretty
I
defensive?
what?"
Did he come kind of defensive?
Yeah, he did, and he came flexing his muscle. And that's the other problem that I have with this too. Like, look, if you have the hammer, you don't have to always use it. And that's part of I think a lot of us in our tough guy mode, and this is a lot of my writing in my book, is like if we get trapped into this egotistical part of us, we want to flex our muscle. And that's I think that's a bad place to be. When I first started like getting into it with Harley guys, I would do that and it would become antagonistic
Right.
so quickly and nothing would come out of that.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's when I learned to just like, you gotta get your voice heard. You got to get your message heard. And you can't do that when you're flexing your muscle. You got to be inviting their contemplation of this idea.
You need to draw them into a thought and conversation.
It has to be
Debate.
really relaxed. Yeah. Because if it becomes competitive, well, then we get into our ego spirit and we just want to like escalate. And that's where this cop kind of came from. And I think even after I went back to the car, I let those two sit back there and talk for a minute. And then I went back to them and I told them, I said, you kind of, and I gave him the muscle move. I said, you were kind of flexing your muscle and you didn't have to do that. After I told him it was my birthday, I said, you just didn't have to do that. And I just want that to be known. And they both looked at me with the tail between their legs look. Really? And so I know it resonated. And that's the thought process that I think you have to be able to get. You can't be like white blood cells isn't about just going out and kicking sand in people's face because it won't work. Yeah. You're just going to antagonize people and piss people off and nobody's going to hear you and it's going to be worse. So you have to develop an attitude of really, being, it's almost mentorish, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to get heated. I get,
yeah,
my temper is quick. So sometimes,
You're Irish or something, right?
No, I'm German. I have a little Irish in me, but
that's the angry part.
That's the angry
German
part
too, though. I mean,
German is, yeah. I wrote an apology. It's not even like, it's just, my AA buddy and I have been talking. He's a young guy and I really like him. He's a really grounded kid. But he talked about in AA, I said, my addiction is rage or anger. And he goes, that's totally, I have another guy in our group that he says that same thing. He's like, his is not alcohol, it's rage. And we have all kinds of addicts in AA. And it's such a good platform to learn how to manage your addiction.
Yeah.
But I wrote him an apology because just 2 days ago, I kind of like, I got pissed off about I'm telling him a story about some other kind of realtor client. Yeah. I always knock on realtors in here. Yeah. Not gonna have any business after these podcasts get live. Dude. No.
It's like there's Ted Wedewer.
No, I know.
You're gonna end up on his podcast if you meet him at an event.
No, but I just got a little pissed off about these kind of, I called it the Napoleon, or he called it the Napoleon man's complex. Because this guy,
yes, you're like littler, and so you're always trying to man up, and you're always trying to assert your authority. I've had some people. That's the only type of person I conflict with. Like, I'm pretty easygoing and laid back, and like I let a lot of stuff go. I've got a really long fuse, but then when there's that person who's like, and usually they're short, they're like short, and so like they've had to always pretend like they're bigger than they are, and so then they just put this energy out there like, what, and you're like, sit down before I sweep kick you.
There is something innately provocative about that. This guy has like
redheads too.
Ouch. I'm not No, I
They're
don't.
short,
You
redheaded.
read
Oh,
it.
it's
Oh,
next
it's
level.
on.
Yeah.
No, this guy has like 7 designations after his name on
Okay.
his,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
he's on every board, and he's like just trying to, the letter of the law kind of guy, and he was flexing his muscle on that stuff with me and Tara because Tara had written an offer or something.
Mhm.
He just was splitting hairs over some just total nonsense. So I was telling this guy Charlie about, and I got really heated up, just in retelling the story, and I said some really silly things. And so later I wrote him an email and I said, "See, that was an example of me getting caught
Mhm.
in my rage, in kind of my rage loop, and thankfully I caught myself this morning and got myself out of it because I read some proverbs."
Mhm.
And he I typed in that email and I said, "I just want to apologize because I said some things that were unnecessary and mean and thoughtless.
Huh.
So I just wanted to apologize to you, and not that I was saying anything about him, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to put the apology out
That's
there."
good. Living
Um,
above reproach.
well, I think that ownership of
Yeah.
of your shortcomings is reconciling for yourself,
Yeah.
if not, it's just putting good karma out there too, I think.
Yeah, I think doing the right thing. I mean, I don't believe in karma, but I believe in
That's a
sowing.
bad word, isn't it? In the Christian
No,
in the
well, I
Christian
mean,
universe.
karma uh, is a whole another philosophy
I
in,
know,
in
I know.
religion.
I apologize. I'll
Sowing
try to.
seeds, though, right? Like
Yes.
I similarly do something with my children, and my wife is good at this too. It's like when we realize that maybe we responded too aggressively or we did the wrong thing, I'll try to go to my children and say, "Hey, I'm sorry that I did that, and please forgive me."
Yeah.
Because I want them to know that one is I truly do care about them and love them, but then also that I am working on myself and I'm not perfect. And so if I can own my flaws and the areas where I'm not that strong, that like they'll hopefully see that and be like, my dad's a good person. Like he's not just thinking he's whatever and he doesn't do anything wrong and he never messes up. So I'm
Pe-
hoping it makes a positive impact in their
It
life at some point.
absolutely, the modeling good behavior is way better than,
Yeah.
saying something and not doing it. But ownership, that ownership thing is our biggest problem in this culture. And that was one of the topics that I wanted to talk about. So another good segue,
There we
right?
go. This is
Um,
natural.
Natural segue. No, the victimization concept in this culture is a real problem because it just basically always, you're always, your problems are the result of somebody else. They're
Yeah.
never, in this culture, we're convinced constantly to believe. And those were some of the television commercials that I was trying to record, just in noticing how many of them are just about this woe is me, kind of
Mm.
poor me, and like there's always a magic solution from this company that's going to sell you the magic fix instead of you just saying like, oh, I could have been more responsible about
Yeah.
this, or I could have taken ownership. It's always somebody else's problem. And dude, that's what I think is our biggest problem is that, I was thinking about this too. Like did you ever, you probably didn't go to any fraternity functions in your younger years, did you?
Oh, dude, I was doing cake stands in the backyard at the
Were
teak
you?
house, bro.
The teaks, the teaks. I forgot about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know of them. When I lived up in Greeley, we lived on 18th and 8th, right next to the college, and the teak house was literally our neighbor.
Were they?
So there were some ragers, and so we, as a Christian fraternity of brothers, I had 6 dudes living in my house. We created a big sign for the front of our house called the Dog Pound,
Yeah.
and then we would do root beer kegers, and we had like a sound
You
system, and
guys
we
are
would like
bad
crank.
motherfuckers, dude. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
and
root
so,
beer
oh
keg.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have no. We gotta come up with a meme for that or something, don't we? You guys hear
Yeah,
that, root beer keggers? Anybody got a meme for that one?
yeah.
Send that back.
Throw out the meme.
No, but so did you haze each other in your Christian fraternity?
Uh, no, I mean not really hazing, but there was a brotherhood of like nut taps and like credit cards up the stairs and just
See,
totally.
dudes always do that. You get a group of guys together, they're always going to do that. I rust a couple fraternities and
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
But
Of
my
course, you're
close
popular.
What?
tennis player.
No, I
Tall,
wasn't. I
handsome, you know, just
somebody
out there.
somebody spread a rumor that I was gay, and I got no. Seriously, I don't know where that
Really?
because I wasn't.
You
I
don't come off
wasn't.
with too many gay vibes. I mean, I didn't know you when you were young, so.
I had some wavy hair or something. I had hair back then,
Dude,
so.
you've still yet to show me a photo of you. Like,
Oh, I will
bust
put
out the
some
yearbook, bro.
photos
I want
up.
to see you.
Well, I had a flat
senior
top for a
year.
while, but I think
Oh,
freshman
okay.
year of college, I think I had some wavy hair. It was the 80s,
Yeah,
dude.
dude.
Yeah. My buddy posted a picture of himself. He looks a lot like me, but Val Kilmer just passed
Yeah.
away, and
Mhm.
my buddy Jason, I know you're out there. He just posted a picture of himself
Looking like Val
in
Kilmer.
his West Point
Oh yeah.
full dress uniform. He does look exactly like Val Kilmer. And he said, "Yeah,
Nice.
back then my code name was Iceman." So something cheesy. So
Uh,
yeah, those were the good old days. I don't look like that anymore, but I was uh
yeah.
I was closer to Sting. Somebody told me I look like
Oh,
Sting.
I could see that
Anyway,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sting has about as much hair as I do now, so
I think a little bit
um,
more, but you know, hey.
he does. He does. I haven't seen Sting in a long time. I think he's taking a back seat. Anyway, where was I? Where were we
We
going?
were talking about ownership,
Ownership,
owning up,
victims.
victims, yes.
Yeah.
You know, one
Oh
thing
no
I
no,
oh
military boot camp. That's where I was going
oh
with
okay,
this.
okay, okay.
So fraternities phrase
Yes,
each other,
yes.
haze each other.
Mhm. Yeah.
Military has boot camp. You're just, and it's psychological just torment.
Right.
Because I've got a handful of buddies. I never went to the military. I think it's great that I think it should be requisite, to be honest with you. But that's another conversation. But even on team sports, most team sports, there's some element of like testing your psychological will to take some
Yeah.
shit, right?
Right.
And if you can't take it, if you can't take some ribbing, well, you're
Yeah.
just gonna get ousted, and that's not such a bad thing because if your skin is so thin that you can't tolerate some
Mm.
psychological adversity, well, you're not going to make it on the team and you're not going to help the team,
I
right?
was talking to somebody about this at lunch today.
Really?
Yeah, we were talking about how we think that they need to bring bullying back. You know,
Dude.
because it was like one of those things where it's like I was the fat kid, and so I got bullied all the time, constantly. You know, so it was like I had to figure out how to like maneuver, and so that gave me a lot more street smarts. And then I like
Yeah.
girls, and so I was like, all right, well I'm chubby, but then I could be funny, and girls like funny guys, so like it all worked out.
Hey, girls like funny guys way more than they like good looking guys. And any
If you can
fat,
make 'em
funny
laugh.
guy can tell you that, dude. My other buddy, my best friend, he's the funniest. He's kind of chubby too, but
Yeah.
he's funny as shit. And he's always
Yes.
been really, he's,
Yeah,
yeah.
I never had a problem getting the ladies. But it was
See,
because I was thankful to the bullies. Thank you out there, all the bullies.
the bullies.
You know,
See,
David Silva, you know who you are.
you're going to name people out personally, though.
No one's gonna find these
Oh my
guys.
God, that's right. You never know. This thing might blow up, and these bullies will come back to
You're
haunt
gonna be
you,
like,
bro.
be like, oh, look at you.
Look at you now. No, but
anyways, yes,
there's a
something to
place.
that. Yeah.
There's a like there's a place for it. And seriously, that's why guys had to go through all that stuff because guys have to perform.
Mhm.
Even in this modern culture where if all you have to do is go out there and be a better salesman than the next guy, well, that hazing helped you at some
Yeah.
point or another.
Your rejection,
Rejection, yeah, you gotta be able to toughen up and handle adversity, and there's just no workaround on that.
Yeah.
The bummer is, and the thing about this whole victimhood thing is, it's obviously targeted at women, but then all of it now it's also bled into guys because guys in this younger generation, not I think it's the millennial generation,
Mhm.
unfortunately. I think the guys younger than that generation have recognized this problem, but they're still kind of caught in it because there's no social forces out there. Like,
Yeah.
unless you're in a fraternity, which I don't know what they're like now. I'm sure they still haze each other, but
I mean, unless some Karen mom like sued him for,
they probably did. I'm not saying that's totally. I mean, nobody's advocating for doing keg stands and whatever they do. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
that's good or bad. I don't know.
waterboarding or
Waterboarding. Did they do waterboarding?
no, I don't know. You know, the paddling where it's like strip down your
That's right.
underwear and just
Yeah.
get beat with the paddle.
There's probably some secret stuff that we'll never know
Yeah,
till
it's
I'll get Seth or somebody on here to tell us about the real stuff
yeah,
that
yeah,
happened. But military stuff too. I mean, like I think the military I've been told is far different now than it was 20 years
oh,
ago
I bet.
in terms of just boot camp. You know, we've seen movies like Full Metal Jacket, dude, right? Full
Yeah,
Metal Jacket was pretty intense, but I think that was pretty close to reality,
yeah,
right? For that time. My dad talked about, you know, I asked him, and he's like a total snowflake. My own dad is like a total snowflake. He was in the National
huh.
Guard. He pulled a Bill Clinton and jumped in the National Guard when they got pregnant with me to avoid the draft, right?
Oh yeah,
But he still went through boot camp, and
yeah,
I've talked to him about this. I'm like, you know, would you be allowed to be just a total sissy? And he's like, no, there's no way.
yeah.
You would get your ass kicked, and there's a reason for like you just have to have a certain amount of tolerance for adversity to fight a war for sure, but to go do anything else
Now,
in
I
life,
know this might sound controversial when I say this.
no way. You're gonna,
So, and this is not necessarily what I believe or how I think, but a thought, uh, you know, just came to me as we're talking about this. Could it be women being more prominent in society that causes the, you know, like the nurturing, like, oh, don't bully, like, don't do these things, like, this is a precious little snowflake, we have to protect them. And it's like, because dudes, right, it's like you think of the classic like football coach, you know, it's like you're on a team of football players, like, be a man, you know.
yeah,
And I'm always torn because I have some friends that have said, oh, therapy's been really good for me, and like, you know, being more self-aware of my emotions and blah blah blah. But again, going back to the whole idea of when you're at war, nobody gives a crap. You take your gun and you go run out into that field,
right.
and you might die.
Well,
Stay in this ditch and you know, like, eat a can of spam for the next like 3 days in the rain,
yeah.
and nobody cares about your feelings, or
Nobody cares
if
if you
you're,
don't
you
like
know,
it.
yeah,
You
it's
just
like
gotta suck
it
it up.
is, yeah,
It's funny that you say that because and there's a bunch to the female kind of orientation or prioritization in our culture. But before I get to that, I want to tell you I met this guy, this Israeli guy. He's from Israel
okay,
just like 2 weeks ago, and he's moved here. He's an engineer, so he moved here about 9 months ago, and he's in his early 40s. He's got kids. Um, and I was talking to him about, you know, his life and coming over here and whatever that looked like, but he was explaining to me how he just got finished up before he came here. He just finished up with his military duty
okay, yeah,
at like 40ish, right? He
uh-huh.
had kids. He's like, I said, is it mandatory? He's like, It's not legally mandatory, but it's culturally mandatory."
Uh-huh.
He's like, look, I wanted to go. And he said it's kind of interesting there because they're really this is a sensitive term that we've gotten in trouble. They're very nationalistic,
Oh
right?
yeah,
You have to. He's like, look, the United States has this interesting kind of um, unique status. They've got an ocean on either side of them, and they've got pretty easily protectable borders, and it's never been attacked by another country in all of its history, right?
right,
He's like, I've been to a lot of other places in the world, and a lot of other places, most places, in fact, are just legitimately dangerous places to
yeah,
be, including the Middle East, obviously.
yeah,
And so that nationalism thing is taken much differently there. They have to actually think about protecting their people and their borders. And look, I mean, it's nice to be polite and nice. You know, we should all want to have good
yeah, of
neighbors and be
course,
inviting. But if somebody's coming to take your stuff too, you have to know, well, I've got to draw a line somewhere.
right,
Now, the wars and stuff in this world are probably all contrived, and where the world has had sand kicked in its face for various reasons too.
yeah,
But in just a truly like in a truly natural state of environment, you kind of nationalism is a good thing. You have to be able to protect your borders. You're not it's the parallel is your house. Like you don't just leave the front door of your house open at night.
Right.
And you just don't say anybody can come in whenever they want, because there will be some people who will take your stuff and maybe kill you.
Yeah.
And you can't have that. And your borders are the same thing as that open door, right? So it was really cool to talk to him and see that perspective, because I never even thought about the two oceans and this, like,
Yeah.
that's
You kind of forget how like secure we are as a nation because I mean you think about Hitler and Germany like you could never take over the whole world, like
right.
back then it was easy. Have you ever played the game Risk?
I played Risk all the
Yeah,
time.
and you
Yeah.
just like conquer and it's like you spread out, right? And then you
Yeah.
have to be strategic of like, okay, I can't spread myself too thin.
Yeah.
And so you start, and so it's like America, we're kind of like we're out here,
We take that position for
Yeah,
granted a lot. And if you've been stuck, I've never lived outside this country, so I think it's something that you just don't even.
right.
And so for him to point that out was really valuable, because nobody
Yeah,
else that I've ever talked to pointed that out. And like the other thing that he was really proud of, the fact that did that military service. And it's cool too to like, he's like, yeah, I said, man, this is such a cool conversation because I just met this guy, I talked to him for like 30 minutes and all of a sudden we're deep into like philosophical stuff.
yeah,
And I'm like, it's so cool that you're willing to talk about this. He's like, well, when you're in the service too, you got a lot of free time. And when you're done talking about like the really superficial
yeah,
stuff, guys talk about this stuff. And
yeah.
I'm like, wow, man,
That's
that's really
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
Because we don't see it that often here. And I think it's because we're just busy on our rat wheel trying to go make some more money.
yeah.
And
So, what's the thought or where were you going with the whole boot camp or with the fraternities
well, so
and all
yeah,
that?
and so the point of that stuff is that as men, you have to have those qualities because you have to produce. Men's whole quality, and I think Dave Chappelle talks about this. Men's value is not in their beauty.
Yeah, no.
It's in their right.
Ability to
My
provide.
buddy Richard, this is why I got Tara, and you've always wondered how I got her, because you have to produce your sweet clothes, your Nordstrom clothes, or
Yeah.
that stuff
J.
isn't
Crew,
gonna work. The
Eddie
girl
Bauer.
doesn't care what you look like. The girl doesn't care what
Yeah.
you look like. She cares what you can do for her. You got to protect her and you got to provide for her. And that's your value, right?
Yeah.
So guys have to perform. Women women's value is their beauty. Women are flowers. They can just be there. And I mean, there's of course other things that they have to be nurturers, and they are nurturers, right?
Right.
I told a couple of clients this week they're getting divorced, and they're both the mother and a grandmother, and they're distraught because their son won't talk to them. And I said, like, you have to recognize your identity is being motherly and nurturing and caring, and those are all necessary qualities for our culture, any culture. You can't just have a bunch of dudes because it'll turn into Lord of the Flies, right? Remember that?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
just kill each other.
We just read that book.
You did?
Yeah,
It's
with
a
my
great
boys.
it's
Yeah,
a
it's really
great
good.
book, a perspective book too
Yeah.
about what can happen if you just got a bunch of young dudes flexing their muscles, right?
Right.
Um, so you need that balance of nurturingness too, but it's an absolute balance between those two things. You
Yeah.
have to have both.
Yeah.
You can't function without both.
Well, I mean, that's why I think that God created man and woman, right? And and
Yeah.
and when He created man, He said, "Oh, it's not good for man to be alone." So I think that there's design and there's purpose in
Yeah.
in that balance, right? That's the male and female, like we're not good on our own or perfect on our own. We need each other, and we each bring these certain things. And I guess that kind of comes back to my idea of like when now we're trying to elevate women outside of like be the president of this country or rule over all these things or do X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
and then they start coming in with the nurturing side of things, which is a positive thing. But then it's like, oh, we don't want people to feel bad. We don't want them to feel insecure. We don't want them to, whatever. And so let's make it illegal to bully. Let's make it illegal to say things like hate speech.
It's really strange. First of all, what they have done to elevate the priority of women, right? That women have more standing legally, economically, like legally, for example,
Oh
when
yeah,
you
you
get
get divorced.
divorced,
Yeah.
the women, right? Economically, like all these ads, like they're trying to put women in this position of power. And that's, look, this is gonna just sound misogynistic. There's no way around it, right?
You're misogynist.
I mean, look, if I am, let's look at history. Like how many legitimate, I'm not saying that women can't be leaders, but
Yeah.
just generally speaking, women are not equipped mentally to be leaders. You have to kind of have some really thick skin, and you can't be a nurturer necessarily to be a great leader. You kind of have to be pretty harsh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, history just does not have a lot of genuinely, now history may be misogynistic. I don't know, but I think it's more natural. I
Patriarchy.
think it's more naturalistic. Patriarchy is the way God intended it to be, and that's what I said like in a couple episodes ago. God wasn't a feminist, right?
Yeah.
I don't think this world, and that's not a bad thing. Look,
Yeah. Right.
women
Right.
are not, feminism isn't about women. I've said that before too. It's about controlling a population of people, and it's about something really sinister, I think, is what's behind feminism. I don't know any happy feminists.
Oh yeah.
If
No.
if you're out there, jump on this and comment and make the counter argument. I want to see what your happiness is based upon, because I don't believe that that's a natural state of being for women. Women aren't naturally prone to want to be super competitive. They
Right.
can be,
Right.
but I'm not saying in their natural state of mind, they're nurturers, I think. I
Yeah.
don't, like what I was saying about men is they're protectors and providers. Women's natural instinct is nurturing and caring for families, right?
Yeah. And then if they're feminist and a vegan, oh man, then it's a double
A
whammy.
double whammy. Wow, man, it's so crazy when you see the purple hair people out there. They just never are smiling. And I'm sure there's some people that would say they're happy, but I mean, I think it's a real conflict for them as much as it is for us to watch it happening. It's
Yeah.
just, that whole comment that Tucker Carlson said all the time when he's on air is weak men and angry women. Like that's the state of our affairs here, is like the guys that kind of kowtow to this whole feministic stuff are not doing themselves or their
Right.
partner any favors by taking on that weak-minded role.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, like, and that comes kind of back to that victimhood thing, where I, I've been in positions where I felt the power of victimhood, and I liked it, because typically, if you have someone who is, say they grow up poor or something, right, and everyone's like, oh man, I'm so sorry, right,
Yeah.
but then it's like I can one up them, where it's like, well, yeah, I grew up poor too, my mom kidnapped me, and my dad was real physically abusive, and then it's kind of like, oh man, I'm so sorry, and then you kind of like that feeling of,
Attention.
the attention,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and then I don't know, it definitely, yeah, I think it begets that negativity.
It begets nothing
Yeah,
but negativity, I
yeah,
think, but it's also another form of addiction, I think.
you're right,
It's because we all want some attention, and that's what John talked about last time. We either like seeking love or
right,
attempting to give love, but we're always trying to seek love, even if it's doesn't come from a really truly loving
yeah,
place,
healthy
that
or yeah,
attention kind of
real,
feels
yeah,
like
totally.
love. And so I think you can get addicted to seeking that out. My mom is a perfect example of seeking out just pitiful negative attention. She's
Mm.
addicted. She's genuinely addicted to it. The only time she calls me is when somebody in our family passed away or they're sick. It's such a strange, and like then my reaction has to be, it
Oh
can never
yeah,
be perfect enough. Like it
right.
has to be this really pitiful, and I'm not prone to doing that, so I never have a perfect reaction in her mind. It's a
Mm.
genuine addiction for her, I think. And that's where I think this victimhood thing has gotten to in this culture, is the place of it's an addiction.
Yeah, and then again, it keeps us separated as a society, right? Like if you make black people the victims and poor people the victims, and this and that, and then it's like now you have the those that have and those that have nots, and then you try to pit people, and then people are like, yeah, and they start believing this narrative that's put out there, and then it just continues to separate us.
That's exactly what it does. I mean, that's the end goal of it and why it's pushed so much, because that is all it does. Because there's guys like you and me are like, I mean, I don't see the purpose in being a victim. I mean, there's a lot of
Mhm.
bad things that happened to me in my
Right,
life, but
but
I
like, what
like,
is it gonna add to value? Yeah.
right. It's not to be pitiful is just completely pitiful. And so I'm addicted to other things, but that ain't one of them. And I
Yeah.
just never could find the value in that. But it totally pits me against all these people who they need to have that negative attention to even just make it through the day. There's so many of those people now. My mom wasn't always like that. My
Right.
mom wasn't, in her younger years, was never like that. She was raised in a farm family where she had to perform too. So she knew the difference, just like my dad in the military. He knew he had to perform too. So this didn't happen until the last 10 or 15 years in this culture where they've taken on this.
Right.
And that's another part of like what I've talked about too. If you're marinating in a pot of kerosene, all these people say like, I don't watch TV, or I don't watch TV, so I'm not susceptible to that sort of thing. Well, you talk to other people who do watch television. We're all
Yeah.
affected by this pot of kerosene that we're all marinating in. And so to some extent or another, we're all kind of affected by this victimhood thing. And look, I know you're right. Like even just on my birthday when nobody was calling me, you're
I
the only
texted
person
you.
that
No,
texted me.
I
My
was
mom,
the only
no, my
person.
mom texted me. My
Okay.
mom texted
Okay. See,
me.
so she's not
She
so
said
bad.
happy birthday, and that's it. Um,
Not like, hey, can we take you to Chili's? Do you want to go to Applebee's?
No,
They got
no,
a 2 for
no, no,
20
no.
special.
Look, but I did start to feel some self pity
Yeah.
by the end of the day. That's why I went and took the hike and I cleared my mind out, and it helped to just get in a space where I could clear my mind out and recognize that I was becoming kind of
Right.
self pitying, and
Yeah.
I snapped myself out of it, and I just there's no point. It's just a day. Your
Yeah.
birthday is just a day like any other day, but it happens to be a day when people really do want
Yeah.
some attention, right? So
Totally.
it did help me to recognize everybody that I know on their birthday now. I'm going to call them.
Okay. There you
Yeah.
go.
So anyway, be
Yeah.
generous.
Well, so where did you go hiking?
White Ranch, White
Is it like
Ranch.
up in Golden or
It's
something like
just
that?
in Golden. It's just a little bit north of Golden. It's such a cool trail.
Okay.
And I went early enough on a weekday. It was a really
The
nice weather
cops were
day.
out.
The cops were out. Oh, by the way, the cops, I mean, this is what I said. I said, you guys are just fee collecting too, right? I mean, like it's
You
one
said
thing to,
that?
yes, that's all they're doing. And we talked about this on the last episode. And he
There
knows
you
full well what
go.
I'm talking about, because drove away from them, and right down the street, there's another cop pulling people over. They were just Golden
Yeah.
cops were just doing their fee collection because the
Yeah. It's like,
chief
hey,
said, go
yeah,
out
hey,
and
we got to raise $100,000 this weekend.
yeah. And just so for all you cops out there, and I love you guys, right? In your hearts, I know you're in the right place, but keep in mind, the fee collection thing is weak because you're already paid with made up money and tax money. Going out and collecting those fees from speeding tickets is ridiculous drop in the bucket, right? So just enforce God's laws, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's going to go at the in the opposite direction that your chief of police who wants to go in, or whatever, the mayor of Denver, the mayor of Golden, all these mayors are on the hook with some kind of Democrat
It's
weird
Napoleon
pol- right?
complexes.
I don't know. My LinkedIn post, can we get to that?
Yeah.
It's kind of, I mean, did you read the whole thing
I
that I
your whole
posted?
post, yeah, I read
Yeah.
your whole post, yeah. Well,
Eh,
you put it in an email. I read that, and
I
then I
wanted to,
went to your LinkedIn to see like, oh, and I
what
was
was
like,
this
oh, he
about?
posted this.
Yeah, I did post it. And part of that is just because I'm kind of testing the audience on LinkedIn. And
So you could lose customers.
well, I don't get any customers off LinkedIn anyway, but
Uh,
I do like to understand how cowardly people in corporate positions are, and they're cowardly big time.
I know, but I guess, and this is one of those things, right? Even for me, or when we first started the show, it was hard for me. Like, it's scary to talk about the things that we talk about in some ways,
Yeah.
because in my professional life, I really try to remain neutral. Like, I don't really want to ruffle someone's feathers or make them feel bad or whatever it might be. And I have some good relationships with people who I know would never in a million years agree with me what I think personally about Trump or religion, whatever that might be. But I'm not trying to change someone's mind or anything like that. I'm just trying to love people well,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like I need to be controversial in order to like flip them to my side.
Well, you may not. I do. I feel like
Yeah.
some people have to be controversial. That's just it's maybe not as much in your DNA as it is in mine
Yeah.
to be controversial.
Well,
I'm
you were
a
designed that way.
I'm designed that
Yeah.
way. But there's a purpose for both of us,
Yeah.
right? Just like there's a purpose for Trump. Trump is the sharpest angle I can see, right? And that's
Yeah.
we need a guy like him too. And as many people think that, that guy's just a lunatic. Maybe he is a lunatic, but you have to understand there's good and bad in everybody.
Right.
Every single person
That's the
has
thing that blows my mind. Like right now, like so many liberals on my Facebook feed are posting all these things, and I'm thinking, don't you want us to get better? Like you're just complaining about a person and a man. You're not once saying, hey, actually these policies are good. We spent $1 billion on a form to take a survey for national parks that then nobody knew where the answers to the survey went. We're spending $1 billion a year. Do you know how many people we could help with $1 billion a year to
right.
like help communities and help people? We were spending it on a form, and then they got rid of that. They said, hey, this is a waste. This is terrible spending. But then all you can say is like, orange man bad, orange man bad. Not like, I don't like the guy, but hey, we shouldn't be wasting $1 billion on a form.
Yeah.
You know?
And it takes a really objective person, somebody who can disconnect their own ego from these things to truly analyze these things for what they are. Because like if you can just recognize there's good and bad in every single person, including yourself, right? We're all have some good and bad, and there's no way around it. If you can start there, then I think it makes it a lot easier to analyze these situations more objectively. I mean, even if you don't like Donald Trump, you have to understand that this guy he's not a total dummy.
Right.
He's surrounded by people that have some capacity to understand this thing.
And he's not Hitler.
And he's not Hitler. Like, look, I don't even know if Hitler is Hitler, right? Because
that's right. The victors write
the victors write the story. And so that's something else to note is like you have to be able to step back from these situations and understand that all these stories have nuance, but they also have, like, do you notice this News Nation? You don't watch TV a lot, but there's a new news channel. It's called News Nation, but it's owned by CoStar. It's owned by some.
Did they just go public recently?
I think it's been around for a while, but maybe a year. It's fairly.
Cuomo went there, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I know.
And so they purport to be, fair and balanced. Dude, everybody is got their angle.
Right.
Where nobody is fair and balanced, right? You're all advocating mostly for yourself, but there's also maybe some agenda depending on where your paycheck is coming from.
Yeah.
And that's something that people have to start getting their freaking arms around. Depending on where your paycheck is coming from, that's what's going to spin your influence mostly. And that's why I think self-employed people, that's why I just think that I really like people who are self-employed because they don't have that bias and influence as much. I mean, they can, because it's like my buddy's like, well, my client base is, and if you're really susceptible, if you're really hooked on money, if you're really hooked on convenience and those things, well, then you're going to be susceptible to having any philosophical standing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's another part of white blood cells that I really like want to put out there is that like we got to get off this hook of measuring everything in dollar terms, in material terms. Life I mean, it seems nice that maybe it's that simple, but life isn't that simple. And all you have to do is look around and look at how fucked up this culture is. There's a lot of rich people in this culture, but we're still just completely jacked up. And I think that I don't think anybody can disagree with that,
Yeah.
right?
No, I agree.
I'm ranting.
I
Get me,
like it.
get me, get me, get,
Get you spun up.
get me off my
Our
perch.
one person watching on Twitch.
Really? There's a
Oh,
person
we
out
got
there?
one person out there watching
Say
on
hello,
Twitch.
Twitch person.
Yeah, I know.
Give us a comment. Maybe they're just playing vids.
Maybe it's
And
your
is it Luke? Luke, are you watching? Um, yeah. Anyway, the I wanted to circle back to the Jim Cramer stuff because again, I mean, there's good and bad about Jim Cramer, right?
right.
We said some bad stuff about him. I do think that there's some really uniquely good stuff about him too.
You think so?
Well, I think he's a great
Okay.
stock analyst. I mean, I know the guy's a workaholic. There's no way you can know as much as he does without reading and analyzing
Yeah,
a ton
that's
of stuff.
true.
And I think that,
He's
the guy's
probably destroyed his marriage and his kids' relationships with his family and like, you know,
you want to stick with the bad stuff, don't you?
he's probably an absolute wreck. But you know, he studied a lot and he's made a lot of
Well,
sacrifices.
he's short, so he's got that short man's
That's
disease.
right.
Maybe he's
He's
trying
just
to
foaming at the
flexing
mouth.
that
Yeah.
muscle. No, and he's entertaining, obviously. I mean, people wouldn't watch him if he wasn't entertaining. So he's got that, that knack for, drawing an audience. What I just the thing that really bothers me about the guy is that like he's just cheerleading for the wrong people, and he's pretending to be such a do-gooder with all, like I saw a Subaru on the way over here. It had a sticker on the back of it that said do good. Look, if you're the kind of person who's doing good, you don't have to advertise it. Just go do it and shut the fuck up. You don't need to advertise that you're doing good.
Right.
You don't need pats on your own back.
Well,
Just go
so
do it.
there's a verse in the Bible that talks about that says, um, when you're fasting, like when you're sustaining from food and connecting with God, don't look like you're hungry and miserable. Like wash your face and go out there and stand up and be proud. Don't
Right.
be like, oh, again, the
Woe is
victim.
me.
Oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, I'm fasting for the Lord right now.
Look at what I'm doing.
Look what I'm doing. Yeah, no, it's like, hey, no one should know,
Right.
and your reward will be in heaven.
I mean, I don't, it seems weird to me that you couldn't agree with that, but a lot of people must not because a
Yeah.
lot of people seek out that strange sort of attention. And that's the one thing that I really take issue with the guy over is that, like, he's such a gloat for attention and then, shilling for fortune for billionaires. Why do
Yeah.
you need to shill for you're already a billionaire. Just go home and shut your trap
Do you
for
think
like
he's a
a year.
billionaire?
Oh, dude, I don't know how he couldn't be. And look, you can look him up. I'm sure most of his wealth is in a trust that you will never know that is his wealth. And that's the other thing about rich guys. They don't put wealth in their own names. They make trusts. And this is something that we'll get into later, right? We'll start talking about trust. And I want a trust guy, a really good,
150 mil that we know
150,
of.
yeah, that we know of. I don't know, whatever. That's more
That's still a
money.
boatload
That's
of money,
still
yeah.
more money than any
Yeah,
man
I mean,
needs.
at that point, that puts you in the FU kind of money.
It's definitely a few kind of money.
Well, that's what happened to Kanye. Have you seen any of his stuff lately?
No,
Dude, it's weird and interesting at the same time.
really?
Yeah, like he's going hard against the Jews, and he's wearing this swastika, like diamond encrusted swastika.
Really?
Yeah, and then I just saw his interview he did last week, and he dressed up in a black leather KKK outfit.
Wow.
For the entire interview. And he's like, I think he's really trying to get people to think.
And that, see, there's something to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
I think
really,
he's being so extreme because he wants to try to wake people up.
yeah,
Because again, with the Jews, it's this victimhood of like, oh, you're anti-Semite if you say anything or question anything. Yet if they're running a porn ring or doing all these like terrible things in society, oh, you can't say anything negative about them because they're Jews. And you know what? 6 million of them died in the Holocaust. So
That's what's so weird about
And
this.
we shouldn't even be talking about
We
this.
shouldn't even be talking because this is really
Yeah,
this is a
when you said
this is the third rail that
Yeah, yeah.
was untouchable for a long time. But that's what's weird about it now is that the third rail has suddenly changed. Like because right, what's all this anti-Semite stuff that's totally socially acceptable on these college campuses to go be an anti-Semite? Why did that all of a sudden like how did that shift
Yeah.
take place and why is it? Did you see that thing? Have you ever seen that picture of like it's got all the CNN execs, all the NBC
Oh
execs,
yeah,
and all
it's
the New
all
York
Star
Times?
David's
It's
on there. It's like, well,
all
that's strange.
they're all executive
Yeah.
level people, and there's hundreds of them, and like 98% of them are Jewish people, right? And that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Somebody put that picture out, and they said, "What's the one thing that all these people have in common?" And at the bottom, the punchline is that they're all Muslims. They're Jew, and this is what weird. That's what's weird about this twist on. And I think we've talked about this before. I don't understand. Maybe we haven't talked about it. That the Jewish people that I know say they don't believe in God. There's a lot of Jewish people that I
Yeah.
know that say they're just cultural Jews.
Right.
So, and I'm like, dude, how can you say you're a Jew if you don't
Right.
believe in God? I don't. And so, like, there's nuance, obviously, in
Yeah.
this too, right? There's the guy that I met from Israel. He is a Bible reader. We talked about it a lot. He reads.
Yeah, the Torah and all that
He
stuff.
reads the Torah every day. Like they just
Yeah.
have a program where like they read a
Yeah.
book a week, and there's
Hey, I
52
finished
books.
the Bible, by the way.
Oh, good for you.
Read the entire Bible.
That's good.
Yeah, 90 days.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna get back on and do.
Do another.
I'm not
Another
gonna
run
do
through?
another 90 because that was like
That's intense,
it was
right?
intense. Yeah, it was very intense, but it was good and I enjoyed it. But I'm gonna maybe stretch out to a year now. Like get on. They have tons of year programs, and then I'll just get on a year program. And,
That's what I think he said. They just do it like, and then they start again because there's 52 books, is what he told me in the Torah, I guess, the Old Testament. And I don't know if the Torah is slightly different than the
no,
Old
I think
Testament.
that's the whole Bible.
Is it?
Yeah, I think in the Torah. I mean, I think there's
I don't know. I
well,
mean,
there's the Tanakh. There's like I don't know.
but he
I'm not
reads it a
saying the right
lot.
things,
And my
yeah.
point is this: is that I mean, I think if there's a distinction between people who believe in God and people who are proclaimed to be cultural Jewish people, which is different. I don't know. I guess then you have to figure out like what is your basis? What is your moral foundation, you know? And is it
Yeah.
about money? Is your moral foundation about money and power? Because that's just it's going to be a different vantage point with which you look at the world. And that's I think the problem where we've gotten to this place in this culture particularly where everybody in this culture views the world from some completely different point of view. Like we're all just based in ourselves. We're all, and that's a really divided place to come from, right? There's no reason for unity in an environment where you're all just focused on your own.
Right. You're out to get yours.
Yeah.
I'm out to get mine. I got to get mine,
Right.
And then you're just, when you're focused on that money and focus on getting yours, then you're like doing whatever it is to crush the person below you so you can get yours.
And that defies our nature as social creatures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just at that very basic level, knowing that we're social creatures, that defies that. And there's a reason why they keep kicking sand in our face to keep us in that state of mind. And we talked about this off air before we got on. The legalization of marijuana has something really sinister to do with that too, I believe, because I mean, the correlation with how me-oriented people have become since they legalized pot, that's a really sharp angle, I think, if you look at a curve on how me-oriented people became. In this state, I think it was 2014 when they legalized pot, right?
I think so.
I mean,
I don't think it's done anything good. And then where's all that tax money?
Oh yeah, that's a good, really, really good point, right? Speaking of the tax money, I drove through Denver. There's more potholes in this city. The streets are just decimated. I don't. That's a really good question,
Yeah, it's
man.
like, well, we'll
The
legalize it, but we're gonna tax it, so we'll get the
We'll get the
money for
revenue
good
from,
causes.
yeah,
Yeah,
and DPS, Denver
yeah,
Public
still the
Schools, is
worst
like the
in the
worst school
nation.
system in
Yeah,
the country. Yeah, it doesn't add up. You're totally right.
yeah,
Thanks for pointing that out, because there's a total disconnection about all this stuff. So
yeah. I definitely think. I guess it's tough, right? Because on one hand, if we make it illegal or make it legal, but part of me is like, well, what if we have? There's so many pot shops and there's so many growing facilities and all this other kind of stuff. What if we outlaw those? But then it's like, well, then how are people going to get their weed once Obviously, they say it's a non-addictive substance, but I'm curious about that because a few people that I know smoke a lot. It's like it's hard for them to, and they're like, I know
yeah,
this is bad for me. I just can't stop smoking.
right,
Like I
right.
thought it was non-addictive.
Humans are addictive
Yeah,
by nature to
it
whatever
it, it
thing.
it allows you to remove yourself from your responsibility or your mind holding you accountable. It's like let me smoke weed and forget about all my responsibilities.
That's what. First of all, there's no question that it makes you lazy.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody who smokes pot could say that they get more motivated when they're smoking pot, right? And then the second thing it does, without question, is it just makes your brain less sharp too. You were saying, we were talking about people watching Star Trek Next Generation, right? And acting as if while they're smoking weed. My college roommate did this a lot. Um, and acting as if he understood physics and astronomy, because look, I mean, I nearly majored in physics. This guy dropped out of college and he wasn't a good student in high school either. So I know he knew very little about physics. But
But
he
he
would
smoked that
imagine,
joint,
he
and then
smoked
he
a
would be
joint.
like, "I get the secrets of the
He would
universe."
imagine, right? And I guess in this imaginary world, you can
Yeah,
be whatever you want to
it's
be, and
right.
maybe
Yeah,
that's part of why, right? That's maybe part of why we have fur guys, or fur. What are the
furries.
furries? You can be whatever. I mean, look, that
Yeah,
it
I guess I'm wondering too. I mean, we're kind of going down this rabbit hole as far as just there are countries like Amsterdam or something, right? Isn't everything legal there? Prostitution,
yeah.
drugs, like whatever it is. And so, but I don't know how many people live in Amsterdam. And then from what I've heard, it seems like a very clean city.
It's a very clean. I think that the Netherlands is just, as a country, is a pretty
Yeah,
stable, profitable, like healthy place to live, and that's kind of the point that I thought of while you're bringing this up. Is, well, why don't we just outlaw? I think it goes back to, like, moralistically, you don't, like,
yeah,
the laws aren't what's going to change anything. You have to have a moral basis for these things. Like you said, I'm going to go home and have a drink sometimes. I mean, I don't want to be outlawed from doing that. I
yeah,
have a big enough brain. I have
yeah.
an adult like enough personality to be able to decide when I can do that. And that's what I think in European countries, for the most part, I think they've given responsibility to their population of people to say, you're adults.
Yeah.
You can decide what is
I guess
appropriate
that's an
behavior.
experiment. And correct me if I'm wrong out there in the world. I'd be curious if there was an experiment that has been done, right? Because we've tried communism, right, and socialism, like trying to do the best for humanity, and
Yeah.
Marxism and like all that kind of stuff, and that's led to killings of millions of
It
people and
always
like
leads to that.
starvation
Yeah.
and whatever. And so, what is the opposite of that? Like like having no ruler. Does it become Lord of the Flies? I guess that's
Well,
my question.
we
Because we've
talked
talked about this, the whole
the
anarchy
last,
and all that
yeah,
kind
the
of stuff.
anarchy
Yeah,
thing. You have to have you have to have
right,
some government to provide certain things for a culture that's as big as ours is. You have to have certain things that,
right.
roads can't be built by private parties.
Well,
You know,
Ayn Rand would argue that.
and there may be some ways to there. I just believe in limited government.
Yeah,
You need to limit it as much as possible. And mostly why I believe in it is not for my own reasons. It's because I've read the guys that designed the kind of structure of this country. Those guys were really, really smart guys who thought this through pretty extensively, way more than we have,
Right.
because those French philosophers that preceded our guys were really thinking about this a lot then too, about individual liberty and the balance between that, and you have to kind of have some HOA, some government, some centralized control over
Yeah.
certain things. But the more you can localize that and have it be in the hands of people that are close to that system. That's why they delegated education to the states, even back in the early 20th century. They delegated education to the states so that the states could decide based on their population how they were going to handle
Yeah.
that. And that's why we have the United States, because it's up to the states. There was only a very limited set of stuff that the federal government was there for.
Yeah.
And a standing army was not one of those things. That's not the Constitution did not
Militia.
ever provide for a standing army, because that's then once you create that standing army, that's once you create a martial law system,
Uh-huh.
that's how you get this kind of
Yeah.
this, that combined with the crooked money system that we have is how these guys stay in power, and you get this like too big to fail kind of stuff going on.
Well, and I think so. Then what that makes me realize is that it really comes back down to, um, starting at the root cause, right? The root cause of, like, if we can help people, and again, as a Christian, I'm coming from a place of like, all right, if we, I think that's one of the reasons why this country was so successful, because it was founded, good, bad, or ugly, on Christian principles
Yeah.
and guidance, right? Where it was like, okay, yeah, there's some standards. Here's God's laws, and we should all be living in this way that Jesus asked us to live. And if we all adhere to this, love your neighbor, take care of the orphans and the widows, if we all adhere to all these things, all of a sudden we're going to be building each other up and loving each other, and we're going to be doing what's good for humanity and not just good for ourselves.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. The title of my second book that I'm working on a little bit, even though I haven't finished my
I
first
was
book.
like, wait, is the first one out yet?
I have 3 books in my mind, but
Okay,
so the
trilogy. It's like
second
Star
one, it's
Wars.
not it's not a Star Wars trilogy. No, but the second book, and this is very serious. This is my quote, and I want this to be
Okay.
marked as my quote,
We
because
got
if
it stamped.
when I die, I
Friday,
just want, if
April
this
4th,
if there's no other
2025.
quote that goes down
Okay.
to my credit, this is the one that I
That's
want.
right. Okay.
The title of the book, though, is going to be "The Greater Good is for the Willing, Not the Forced."
Mm.
Okay, and so that kind of fits in what, or in my mind, it
Are
fits
we
in.
going to see that on your tombstone?
I hope so.
Okay.
And that's kind of an Ayn Randish kind of thing
Yeah.
too. Although I haven't read that book.
Okay.
Have you? You said you've read it, haven't you?
I've started. It's a heavy lift. It's deep.
Yeah.
She has another book but if you watch, did you watch her like Ted Koppel interview back in the '60s or?
I've seen a little bit of her talk. I didn't watch the whole interview, and it's been a
Okay.
long time. So I know she's kind of a grouchy old gal, isn't
Yeah.
she? They called her the bitch, or they do call her the bitch, don't they?
I mean, I think she could have been more. The thing I don't like necessarily about her is because she was anti-religion
Yeah.
and God. She probably just had a bad experience in her youth, and then she was throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
You know. But
That's exactly what I said on that short that we talked about with you. That one got a lot of views
Did it
too.
really?
Yeah,
Okay,
throwing the
nice.
baby out with the bathwater.
People like that.
No, I think that was a good point that you said about religion. Just did a horrible job of representing conservative
Right.
ideas, right? And I think it did. And um, but the greater good being for the willing, not the forced, is kind of fits in with biblical thinking. You have to in your heart have it. It's a choice. It's your choice. You can't be forced to, give money to. There's no intent if you're forced to give money to the needy,
Right.
right? If
Right.
you're willing to do it, the natural setup of that just makes the system work a lot better. And that's the whole point of free markets, right?
Right.
That's why Ayn Rand was a proponent of, and that's why all libertarians are a proponent first of the rights of the individual.
Mhm.
The rights of the individual need to be protected. Now, that's not to say that you have to be a gloat and you have to be, see, that's the nuance of this. Being a gloat and being me oriented is not the same as upholding the rights of the individual. The rights of the individual need to be upheld by the law so that the individual doesn't get run over by groups of people. Because groups of people will always,
Right.
and this is evidenced out, like you said, communism, socialism, even if you have an HOA,
Right.
an HOA of 10 people are going to step on
They're
the
gonna
one
bully
guy.
somebody.
They're
Yeah.
going to, so that's
Yeah.
the problem. Whoever came up with legal fictions was, I mean, on one hand, it's good because you can consolidate resources because you got to kind of do that. It's kind of cool. How are we going to build a bridge? You got to get a bunch of guys together to do it. Well, who's going to own the bridge? How are we, who's going to
Yeah.
pay for it and all that stuff? So you got to figure this out. Like legal, how are we going to organize it? So there's a point to creating legal fictions, corporations, LLCs, whatever it is. A government is essentially a legal fiction. But at a certain point too, you have to understand that eventually they're going to trample the rights of the individual.
Yeah.
And that's why John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, all those guys recognized that in the beginning. We got to protect that set of rights above all else. That's just a theoretical thing that you must do. And that's where I think the libertarian philosophy gets conflated with anarchism, and it's not the same thing. There's a lot of nuance in these things, right?
Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
No, I think so. I think 100%.
Getting intense today, huh?
We had a good conversation.
Yeah.
Kind of all over the.
It's all over the
place.
map a little bit. I just wanted a mic drop on this idea that I know we didn't actually get the prop to do it, but
did you want an actual?
that tariffs didn't work, as evidenced by the stock market. I don't know if any of you guys have been watching the stock market the last 2 days. Tariffs didn't work. He announced that he was going to do tariffs 2 days ago, and then the stock market took a giant shit. And so all these people on the news are saying, yeah, see, tariffs didn't work. And and a lot of people like buy into this idea too. I mean, tariffs are going to take more than 2 days to quote unquote work. And again, like measuring them by way of what the stock market is doing. We've been living like MC Hammer in this country for like the last 20 or 30 or maybe 50 years. To undo that, and I don't know if tariffs are the way to undo that, but any solution is going to take 20 or 30 or 50 years to come about, I think. And so I'm just laughing at the whole media system. It's just like, see, we told you so. They didn't work.
Right.
I mean, it's going to take some pain and suffering to get us back to a place of more responsible behavior and economics in this country, I think. I don't know. That was just
mic drop.
My mic drop on the tariffs didn't work. It's probably a little more dramatic than it needed to be, right? To do the mic drop on that.
Yeah, I think it would have been a waste of a mic drop.
Maybe you're right.
I think
maybe
when tariffs do work, then you can be like, look, tariffs worked.
Do you think there'll be a moment when that will
the tariffs will work
evidenced? I don't know. I mean, like, what does work mean? That's another thing.
What's the whole,
what's the
point? Trying to make eggs cheaper? Just breed more chickens.
Yeah, I mean that's what all these people think is making stuff cheaper. This guy, I was watching this guy. He's a shrimp boat captain.
That's Forrest Gump.
It wasn't Forrest Gump. No, this guy's a legit shrimp because they were talking about shrimp on one of the stations this morning, and like this guy's like a South Carolina shrimp boat guy, and he was saying American production of shrimp is like 6% of the market in this country. Like most of the shrimp is imported from other countries. And they're like, well, do you think that the shrimp that are imported is it better quality? Or he's like, absolutely not. I mean, they're like the shrimp farms, and he explained like they're cutting down mangroves and they're farming shrimp in these really kind of environmentally gross conditions in parts of Vietnam or Thailand, wherever they're doing it. And most of the imports are just horrible quality shrimp. And he's like, so, we go with this saying that, cheap, good shrimp aren't cheap, and good seafood isn't cheap, and cheap seafood isn't good. It just made me laugh.
My father-in-law was a BMW salesman. He used to say
said the same thing.
Good things are not cheap, and cheap things are not good. Buy BMW.
I mean, I think that's true. But I like the shrimp one better because I'm
Yeah,
not the
the
seafood.
whole it just makes me think of cocktail sauce and
I know.
little squeeze of lemon.
Isn't shrimp just cheap just by its
Yeah,
nature? I don't know. I
it's a
mean,
bottom feeder.
it's a bottom feeder, truly. Yeah. Anyway, it was a
Uh,
funny comment. The guy was a funny dude.
yeah. Well,
Um,
I definitely think there needs to be a reset. There has to be a new set level, even with this whole Doge thing and like tearing down the system of education or whatever it might be. It's like let's tear it because clearly it's not working. Clearly, all this stuff over the past 30 years, 40 years hasn't worked, right? Like it's broken. So we're a lot smarter now. We've got AI. Let's tear it all down and then figure out the classroom was designed for factory workers, for people to
right.
sit there and hand make widgets all day. And so that's why they created the class. So why don't we tear it down and say, what do we need in the future?
Yeah.
And how should we design things in order for it to be better? And like, I don't know why everyone's losing their brains over this. Like, so many good people are losing their jobs. It's like, yeah, but they sucked at their job, and
Yeah.
we're in trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. Like, this is broken. So let's tear it all down and then let's rebuild it like thoughtfully because we
Well,
have an opportunity to do that.
yeah, and I don't think you can even just tear it all down. I wish it was that easy. Like everybody imagines, like we're just gonna scrap it, and like it's even more complex than that because we got to kind of keep it all going at the
Right.
same
Yeah.
time we rebuild it. But you make a good point about the fact that why are all these people squeaking about something being done? Because I don't think there's anybody who can question the fact that this place is jacked up.
Yeah.
Right? Even the lib nuts who are out there squeaking about, I don't think they're sitting around saying, "Well, this place is so great, like we really need to defend it." And if they did, give us some concrete reasons about why you can defend this. Like,
Right.
give us some substantive, like,
Yeah. Rebuttals.
facts
Yeah.
about what this means, other than just screaming and yelling at people. Because that's most of the arguments from that side of the equation are just like emotionally driven, screaming and arguing. That isn't substantive. I mean, I think you're right. It does need to be rebuilt, and it can be rebuilt.
Mhm.
It's just the thoughtfulness of it is is part of it. But you can't have a bunch of people just screaming. And you got to ask yourself, who are these people that are just screaming these emotional things? These people are paid by somebody.
Yeah.
They're not just out doing it because there's some kind of funding source that's causing them
Well,
to go do that.
that or they're just NPCs,
What is an NPC?
non-playing character.
Okay.
You know, it's like in a
Okay.
video game where there's just the people like walking around and they're just,
Keep saying that because the Twitch guys totally get that. No,
Yeah.
and useful idiots is
Yeah,
the
so
useful
it's like
idiot.
the person who's just sitting there watching CNN or MSNBC,
Yeah,
and they're just parroting what they're hearing, but they don't have an actual intellectual thought or idea or even a way of like, oh, you know what? This is how we should make this better, right? They're just like
they're just they're
regurgitating what
just
the input
regurgitating.
is, and then they're just like, oh, look, there's a guy in the shop. I need to buy a hammer,
Yeah, what's that movie Idiocracy? Did you ever see
You know
that
what?
movie?
I'm gonna watch it this weekend.
Watch it with your kids because they'll laugh. But it's really kind
Is
of
it
telling.
appropriate?
It's totally appropriate. It's just stupid as crap. But there's a guy in one of the scenes. There's a guy just sitting in his lazy boy chair in front of a TV, just eating goo, like it's like green goo or something. He's just like what you talk about, like
Yeah.
the epitome of an NPC. And that's like kind of the direction that we're going in this country. But it just takes a little exercise of your brain to get out of that. Like exercise your capability to have some thoughtful conversations about things and just ask yourself, I mean, is this worth thinking about? Like, why do we do? Well, just ask yourself why.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good right. Well,
Just why?
why?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good starting place, I think.
Well, I think the future looks bright.
I do too. I'm really totally
We got
encouraged.
people like you in this world who are just passionate about making things better and like, getting the word out there and stuff like that. And they're thoughtful thinkers. And so, I
I
think we're on the dawn
I
of the
think we
age of
are
Aquarius.
seriously after a forest fire, those green shoots,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, not that this is forest fire. I think it's just
Yeah.
good to ask why and then get out and do some stuff about it, you
Yeah.
know? Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a wrap, huh?
Yeah, I mean, We had somebody pop up on YouTube today.
Oh, nice.
Somebody's
Hello,
still on Twitch.
YouTuber.
I don't know who's on Twitch.
Well, we're gonna find out. Who Twitch is an audience that I really want to
Audience
tap
of one.
into.
I don't even know how they found us, but
Well,
hey, thank you for sticking around this long.
yeah, thank you. We can't stick recordings up onto Twitch yet, so we just have to do live streams. And one thing I was thinking about doing is just doing some readings out of some books,
Sure.
and then just commenting on
Do you want
that.
to leave us with a couple proverbs that you've
A couple
pulled for
proverbs.
today's?
Yeah, let's
You know, maybe send people off this weekend with some inspirational
yes.
wisdom.
My favorite this goes back to my Whores and Robots when we first met. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. That's one of my favorites. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. And then the last one that I'll, well, there's a couple. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteousness man runs into it. Excuse me. I'm terrible at reading stuff.
That's right. You were hazed too much. in college.
I was. PTSD is coming back. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteousness man runs into it and is safe. I typed that wrong. The righteous man runs into it and is safe.
Yeah.
I don't know why I put ness on the end of righteous.
Righteousness. Well, there's righteousness.
There is righteousness, but it's not in this sentence. The righteous man runs into it
Yes.
and is safe. God, sorry guys, I really jacked
It's all
that up.
right.
Just go pull up.
The
It's
spirit of it. will
it's
transfer.
Proverbs 18:10. Okay,
Nice.
for those of you who want to go. Anyway, those are
Yeah,
my
all right,
proverbs. Those are a
thanks,
couple
dude.
this morning. Book of Proverbs is a really good one to kind of revisit.
It's a
I
good
think.
place to start, because it's just real wisdom. It's just basic stuff that like kind of will give you some inspiration and guidance for each day. And there's 31 of them, and so on, either 30 or 31 days in a month. So every day
Yeah,
you can read like 60 seconds.
it's a good
Maybe
chapter a
2 or
day.
3 minutes.
And
to
it is.
your
It's
time.
really grounding and a good way to get your day started off in a good frame of mind. Because that's
Yeah.
where I was this morning at 4 a.m. So
Nice.
knocking these out. So
All right.
all right, guys. Thanks for jumping on
Yeah.
on Twitch. Any of you guys, we'll be back here next week at the same time, 3:30
We got a
next
special
week.
guest.
We got a special guest, Craig, and we're going to be talking about some more men's issues. So join us next week at 3:30 on Friday.
That's right, 3:30 Mountain Time.
Mountain time.
That's
Forgive
right.
me. Yeah, we
I
got a
don't know where this
worldwide.
person
We
on
got a
Twitch is.
worldwide audience.
That's right. They might be in Bangladesh. I don't know what's in Bangladesh, but
If you're there, you're probably sleeping. If you're in
exactly.
Bangladesh.
Set your alarm for 2 a.m.
Right on. All right, guys. We're out.